guards at the Windsor Castle gate just made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the royal family. During a search of Tom Parker Bowles' car, security uncovered a locked briefcase packed with Prince William's private duchy files. Inside were strictly confidential revenue plans, security codes, and unapproved commercial deals. Queen Camilla tried to intervene immediately, but William refused to yield. Instead, he delivered a response that completely stunned the public and reshaped power inside the palace. The red light at the Windsor checkpoint. The rain was coming down hard over Berkshire on the morning of Tuesday, July 14, 2026. At 7:30, a black Range Rover pulled up to the north gate of Windsor Castle. The driver was Tom Parker Bowles, food writer, author, and son of Queen Camilla. Security at the perimeter was unusually tight that morning, as royalty and specialist protection officers conducted routine vehicle sweeps under upgraded threat levels. An officer signaled for the vehicle to stop on the cobblestone approach. Tom rolled down his window and gave a brief nod to the officer on duty. The guard scanned his vehicle clearance pass, but the barrier gate did not rise. Instead, a red indicator light flashed on the guardhouse console. The officer stepped closer to the driver's side door, asking Tom to turn off the engine and unlock the rear trunk for a standard sweep. Tom hesitated for a second, mentioning his destination was a private meeting near the estate grounds. The guard held his position and repeated the request without changing his tone. Protocols at the castle had been completely overhauled 6 months earlier under strict orders from Prince William. No exceptions were allowed for non-working family members or unannounced visitors. The trunk opened with a soft mechanical click, allowing 2 officers to begin checking the storage area. They moved past personal bags and umbrella stands until, in the far corner, tucked beneath a heavy wool coat, lay a slim, dark leather briefcase. It was a custom piece fitted with a double-dial combination lock. The lead officer asked Tom if the bag belonged to him, and Tom acknowledged it was his personal bag containing working notes for a publishing project. The officer moved his handheld scanner over the leather casing, registering dense paper stacks and metallic objects inside. Protocol required officers to verify the contents of all unsealed or unverified containers brought past the inner perimeter checkpoint. The officer asked Tom to provide the combination to open the case right there in the rain, but Tom declined. He asked the guards to let him proceed to the parking area near Adelaide Cottage. The guard did not ask Tom to step out of the car right away, but instead called the Personal Protection Command directly from his radio unit. Within 4 minutes, 2 additional officers arrived from the main guardhouse to manage the scene. The duty sergeant walked up to the car window and informed Tom that the vehicle could not pass the gate until the bag was checked. Tom reached for his mobile phone, telling the sergeant he was going to call Clarence House to clear up the confusion. The sergeant stood firm, explaining that security calls at the gate could not bypass protection protocols, regardless of who was on the phone line. Tom eventually dialed the 3-digit code on the dials and popped the brass latches open. The sergeant lifted the leather lid under the glare of the inspection lamp. What lay on top was not a book draft or a culinary manuscript, but a thick bundle of white paper marked with a red security stamp. The bold lettering across the header read, Duchy of Cornwall, Internal Review. Beneath that document sat a bound ledger with blue tab dividers labeled Sandringham Estate, Private Security Protocols, and Highgrove House. Land Revenue Projections 2026 to 2030. These were restricted institutional files that did not belong to the public domain or outside the private office of the Prince of Wales. The duty sergeant immediately took a step back and signaled to his partner to secure the briefcase. He then requested Tom to turn off the ignition completely and step out of the vehicle. The officers led Tom into the side room of the North Gate guardhouse while the black vehicle remained parked under the barrier light with its hazards blinking. Inside the guardhouse, the duty sergeant filled out a formal incident log, listing the time as 7:42 in the morning. He recorded the items found in the car as sensitive institutional documents held without authorization. Tom insisted there was a simple explanation, claiming the papers were background material provided to him for a historical research project. He stated he had no intention of using them for anything beyond personal background reading. The sergeant listened quietly without debating the point, placing the open briefcase on the stainless steel desk to photograph each visible page. Among the printed pages was a breakdown of private farm leases in Devon, alongside a draft agreement marked confidential, third-party commercial licensing with handwritten marginal notes made in black ink. The duty sergeant recognized the legal weight of those pages instantly, as they contained active financial data, updated through the middle of 2026. At 7:55, the sergeant made 2 calls, the first to the local base commander and the second directly to the private secretary of the Prince of Wales at Adelaide Cottage. Prince William was getting ready for a morning meeting when his phone rang, receiving the news in a brief, direct sentence that a family guest had been detained at the North Gate with internal duchy files in his trunk. William asked if the files were originals or copies, and his secretary confirmed they were printed originals bearing internal office stamps. William instructed the security team to keep the briefcase in the guardhouse safe and log every single page before anything was moved or returned. He made it clear that no documents were to leave the gate premises under any circumstances. 10 minutes later, news of the incident reached Clarence House, where King Charles was in his study preparing for a scheduled virtual briefing. An aide entered the room and handed him a short printed note from Security Dispatch confirming the detention and held materials. Camilla walked into the study moments later, having already received a brief text message from her son inside the guardhouse. She immediately urged the king's team to step in and clear the matter quietly, arguing that it was an overreaction by gate staff who did not recognize Tom. She wanted the briefcase returned and her son allowed through without further delay, but the king looked at the security notice on his desk and held back. He did not order the gate officers to release the bag, choosing instead to call his own private secretary for clarification. Back at the North Gate, officers spent over 40 minutes logging the paper stack page by page as each sheet was scanned, numbered, and placed in a clear evidence folder. Tom sat on a wooden chair in the corner of the guardhouse office, declining an offer of tea and spending most of the time looking out the window at his parked car. By 8:45, a silver sedan pulled up outside the gatehouse carrying a senior security official from the Home Office. The official walked inside, spoke with the duty sergeant in low tones, and signed the official inspection sheet. The physical files were secured inside a Navy transport case, which the official locked and carried out to his vehicle. The destination was not Clarence House, as the sedan drove straight toward Adelaide Cottage to deliver the evidence directly to Prince William. What was hidden? Inside the leather briefcase. The Navy transport case sat unopened on a mahogany table inside Adelaide Cottage. At 9:15 that morning, Prince William walked into his home office. He was accompanied by his personal legal counsel and his chief private secretary. The senior official from the Home Office stood beside the window, holding an official chain of custody log. The official placed a small brass key on the table and stepped back. William unlocked the transport case without saying a word. He lifted out the clear evidence folders prepared by the gate team. The first item was a spiral-bound report printed on heavy bond paper. The cover page bore the formal seal of the Duchy of Cornwall. The document outlined internal revenue projections for tenant farms across Cornwall and Somerset. These figures were created during a private finance board meeting in late May 2026. Only 6 senior executives possessed authorized copies of that document. The paper version found in the car was an original print run from the Duchy's main office on Buckingham Gate in London. It bore a distinct blue ink stamp on the bottom right margin. The second folder contained a legal draft titled Project Heritage Licensing Agreement. The draft detailed plans to license royal estate branding to foreign luxury investors, including a major hospitality group based in Dubai. Attached to the back of the agreement was a proposed fee schedule detailing percentage payouts for brand consultants. Tom Parker Bowles was listed on page 14 as a principal advisory partner for food and beverage operations. William flipped through the remaining sheets in the stack. Beneath the corporate contracts lay a folded sheet of cream stationery. It contained a handwritten list of 6 individuals working across the royal households. 5 of the names belonged to mid-level administrative staffers based at St. James's Palace. The 6th name was a senior records clerk employed in the private correspondence office of the Prince of Wales. Next to the records clerk's name was a handwritten date, June 22, 2026. Beside the date was a list of 3 specific internal folder numbers. Those folder numbers corresponded directly to the archived estate ledgers for Balmoral Castle and Frogmore Cottage. The handwriting on the stationery matched notes found in the margins of the commercial pitch decks. William pointed directly to the name of the records clerk. He asked his legal counsel to verify if that staff member had clearance to print paper copies of executive board files. The counsel checked the digital audit logs on a tablet. The logs showed no record of the clerk downloading or printing those specific files. Someone had bypassed the central IT monitoring system to extract the physical files directly from the safe. This explained why physical paper was carried in the car instead of encrypted digital drives. Digital transfers leave immediate server footprints across the Palace network. Physical paper copies, removed quietly from a secure cabinet during off hours, avoid automated flag systems. The physical files were meant to be delivered to outside legal advisors without generating a digital paper trail. At 9:40, the chief secretary presented a second discovery from the briefcase. Tucked inside the back pocket of the leather casing was a set of laminated security passes. One pass granted vehicular access to restricted service yards at Kensington Palace. A second card was a temporary contractor badge for the private grounds of Highgrove House. Neither pass was registered under Tom's name in the Central Protection Database. The contractor badge had been issued under a generic corporate profile registered to a media consulting firm in Mayfair. Public corporate registry filings showed the firm was incorporated in early 2025. The firm's listed directors included a former communications officer who had previously worked for Clarence House. The discovery shifted the situation from a perimeter breach to an active internal leak. William instructed his legal counsel to secure all physical items in a tamper, evidence safe. He directed his private secretary to suspend the records clerk's system access with immediate effect. He ordered that no staff members be informed of the suspension until a formal review was completed. At 10:10, William called his father on a secure line. He detailed the exact contents of the briefcase item by item. He read aloud the names listed on the cream stationery and described the commercial pitch decks. He stated clearly that the duchy files contained proprietary financial structures that could not be shared with private commercial partners. King Charles listened to the brief without interrupting. When William finished reading the list, the king confirmed he had not authorized any commercial licensing discussions involving the duchy brand. He agreed that the presence of internal security passes required an immediate investigation by the Metropolitan Police. However, the conversation stalled when William addressed the commercial pitch decks. William stated that all individuals named in the licensing drafts must face an immediate audit. This included non-working family members who would engage with outside investors using royal estate assets as leverage. The king hesitated, noting that a public inquiry could cause collateral damage to ongoing charitable projects. William maintained his position. He stated that institutional security took precedence over personal considerations. He informed his father that the files were now secured as physical evidence under the care of his legal team. He made it clear that the investigation would proceed according to standard governance rules without exceptions. As the call concluded, a second security report arrived from the North Gate. Guards had completed a secondary search of Tom's vehicle before towed transport arrived. Under the front passenger mat, officers found a second sealed envelope. It was addressed to an international asset management firm with offices on Piccadilly. The mystery of how deep the network ran was now expanding. Camilla's emergency intervention at Clarence House. At 10:30 that morning, Queen Camilla walked briskly down the main hallway of Clarence House. She moved past the morning staff and entered the private office of the King's senior private secretary. Her personal private secretary followed 2 steps behind, carrying a leather notepad. The room was already crowded with 3 senior communications advisors and a constitutional lawyer from the Privy Council. Camilla sat down at the edge of the conference table. She asked if the police had formally logged the materials found at the gate as stolen property. The lawyer explained that the files were currently classified as intercepted internal documents under security review. He added that no formal criminal charges had been filed by the Metropolitan Police against any individual yet. Camilla immediately directed her communications director to draft a briefing note for the press office. She wanted the narrative framed as a minor administrative misunderstanding regarding historical research. She argued that Tom had been invited to contribute ideas for an upcoming heritage food festival near Burke Hall. She stated that the papers were merely background context provided by an enthusiastic staff member. The communications director looked down at his notes before answering. He pointed out that the presence of active financial projections from 2026 made the historical research angle impossible to defend. He noted that 2 major national newspapers had already received tips about a high-profile vehicle search at the castle gates. The press office could not state without aligning it with the report being prepared at Adelaide Cottage. At 11 o'clock, Camilla asked to speak with the king privately in the morning room. King Charles was sitting at his desk, reading a printed copy of the security dispatch. His medical team had advised him to avoid high-stress meetings during his ongoing recovery regimen. Camilla sat across from him and urged him to intervene directly with the Home Office team. She argued that allowing a formal investigation to proceed would damage the family's public standing during a sensitive summer season. She suggested that the king use his administrative authority to recall the files to Clarence House for an internal review. She insisted that the entire matter could be handled quietly between family members without formal police involvement or public statements. The king set the security report down on the blotter. He pointed to a specific paragraph highlighting the unauthorized contractor pass for Highgrove House. He reminded her that security passes for royal residences were strictly regulated by law following security breaches in 2024. Overriding protection protocols for a family member would create serious constitutional complications with parliamentary oversight committees. While they spoke, an aide entered the room with an urgent update from St. James's Palace. The records clerk named on the handwritten stationery had just been escorted from the building by security officers. IT administrators had locked down the clerk's computer workstations across all royal sites. The physical search of the clerk's desk had uncovered 2 more printed financial ledgers tucked inside a locked filing cabinet. Camilla realized the situation was moving far beyond a simple media management issue. She instructed her personal lawyer to contact Tom directly at the Northgate guardhouse. She wanted to ensure he made no further statements to protection officers without legal representation present. Her team began drafting a secondary strategy focused on isolating the commercial pitch decks from her own official charitable work. At 11:40, a senior communications officer from Kensington Palace sent an encrypted email to the Clarence House press team. The message was brief and unambiguous. Prince William had approved an independent forensic audit of all duchy intellectual property and licensing records dating back to 2022. Kensington Palace would not be issuing a joint statement with Clarence House. Camilla called an emergency strategy session with her private advisors in the library. She realized that William was setting up a clear boundary between the core working monarchy and external family interests. Her team discussed whether to issue a proactive statement from her personal office emphasizing her own strict adherence to official protocols. The lawyer advised against issuing any independent statement. He warned that taking a public stance before the Metropolitan Police completed their initial assessment would only draw more attention to the briefcase contents. He recommended waiting to see whether the Home Office would open a formal inquiry into the contractor badge issued in Mayfair. By 12:15, the tension inside Clarence House reached a peak when the King's private secretary returned from a secure conference call. He informed the room that the King had officially declined to halt the Home Office assessment. The King had instructed all staff members across all households to cooperate fully with the Protection Command. Camilla stood up from the table and walked over to the window, looking out toward the garden. The strategy to contain the story internally had failed within 4 hours. William held the physical evidence, the King had backed the official protocol, and the press team was running out of time before the evening news cycle opened. An aide then approached Camilla with a fresh message from her son's legal team. They had just uncovered a copy of the secondary envelope found under the car mat. The envelope contained a draft proposal to register a trademark for royal estate produce in Tokyo. The scale of the operation was far larger than anyone in Clarence House had initially assumed. William's 48-hour strategy. At 1:15 that afternoon, Prince William sat at a dark wooden table inside the security annex at Adelaide Cottage. Spread across the surface were red-bordered files, corporate registry printouts, and a map of royal estate boundaries across the United Kingdom. His chief legal counsel and his senior communications strategist sat opposite him with open notebooks. A large wall clock ticked steadily as rain tapped against the glass windows. William picked up a black fountain pen and opened a blue folder marked Sovereign Estate Governance Framework. He drew a thick line through 3 specific paragraphs regarding non-working family access privileges. He then looked at his legal counsel and gave a simple, direct instruction. He ordered a complete lockdown on all commercial licensing applications involving royal property names, effective immediately. The strategy was designed to unfold over 48 hours with zero public emotional display. Step 1 began at 2 o'clock when the legal team dispatched formal administrative notices to every royal household office. The notices stated that any contract using a state intellectual property without written clearance from the Prince of Wales would be declared void. The directive applied across all territories from Cornwall to the Scottish Highlands. Step 2 targeted the physical access system across royal sites. At 3:30, security administrators at the Protection Command updated the central database in London. All special vehicle passes issued to non-working family members and their private associates were canceled in the system. The new rule meant that anyone without an active official duty had to pass through standard public security gates like any outside visitor. At 4 o'clock, William met with the Chancellor of the Duchy of Cornwall via a secure video link. He requested an emergency review of all vendor agreements signed over the previous 24 months. He specifically requested an audit of any consulting contracts linked to food supply chains, publishing deals, or international export ventures. He wanted to know if any duchy funds had ever been directed toward private firms in Mayfair. The Chancellor confirmed that an initial digital scan showed no direct financial transfers from the duchy accounts. However, he noted that several preliminary meetings had been logged between minor estate officials and representatives of a luxury food export firm in 2025. Those meetings had taken place at a private club on Pall Mall without the board's knowledge. The meeting logs were immediately flagged for the forensic audit team. At 5:20, William's team turned their attention to the internal security breach. The records clerk who had been removed from St. James's Palace was formally interviewed by internal investigators. The clerk admitted to printing the physical ledgers after hours over a 3-week period in June. He claimed he believed the documents were being gathered for an authorized internal heritage publication, managed by outside advisors. The clerk provided the investigators with printed copies of email threads sent from a private webmail address. The emails contained specific requests for financial data, estate maps, and security gate rosters. The sender used the pseudonym G. Spencer, but the server routing data pointed directly to an IP address registered to an office building on Regent Street. That building housed the headquarters of the media consulting firm linked to the Mayfair corporate registry. William reviewed the server data at 6 o'clock. He did not issue a public statement or voice anger to his staff. Instead, he signed an executive order authorizing full cooperation between palace security officers and the Metropolitan Police. He ensured that every email thread, printed ledger, and gate log was placed in official police custody without redacting any names. Later that evening, an aide brought news that Queen Camilla's legal representatives had requested an informal meeting at Kensington Palace. They wanted to discuss a potential settlement regarding the trademark applications found in the car. William instructed his private secretary to decline the meeting politely. He stated that all communications regarding the investigation must go through formal legal channels in writing. By 8:30 on Wednesday morning, the second phase of William's strategy was fully active. Teams of forensic accountants arrived at the Duchy's main offices on Buckingham Gate to begin a physical document sweep. They sealed 2 private filing rooms and seized server backup drives dating back to 2023. Staff members were informed that refusal to cooperate with the audit would result in immediate dismissal without severance. At 11 o'clock, news leaked to national newsrooms that a major administrative overhaul was underway across the royal estates. Media outlets began speculating about a rift between the households regarding commercial ventures. Kensington Palace refused to comment on rumors, issuing only a brief statement confirming that estate governance rules were being updated to ensure absolute transparency and security. The public silence created intense pressure on those involved in the private venture. At 2 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, the directors of the Mayfair consulting firm filed emergency paperwork to dissolve their corporate entity. They attempted to wipe their company records and cancel their commercial lease on Regent Street. However, police officers arrived at the premises before the records could be removed. At 4:15, William received a private call from the Home Secretary regarding the progress of the inquiry. The Home Secretary confirmed that the police had recovered additional commercial pitch decks from the Regent Street office. The documents outlined plans to secure multi-million-pound investments from private funds in Geneva and Singapore. The entire operation relied on demonstrating direct personal access to the royal family. As night fell over Windsor, William finalized the draft of a new institutional protocol document. The protocol created a permanent firewall between the official working monarchy and any private commercial activities of extended family members. He placed the signed document on his desk, ready for the crucial face-to-face meeting scheduled at Windsor Castle the following afternoon. The 48 hours were almost up, and the trap was completely set. The confrontation in the Green Drawing Room. At 4 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, Prince William walked into the Green Drawing Room at Windsor Castle. Rain beat steadily against the tall, leaded windows overlooking the quadrangle. King Charles sat in a high-backed armchair near the fireplace, holding a pair of reading glasses in his left hand. Queen Camilla sat across from him on a green silk sofa, her hands resting tightly over a leather notebook. William did not sit down immediately. He walked over to the mahogany table in the center of the room and placed a navy leather folder on the polished wood surface. Inside were the verified findings of the 48-hour forensic audit. The stack included police evidence logs, corporate registry records from Mayfair, and financial pitch decks linked to private accounts in Geneva. Camilla spoke first, pointing out that Tom Parker Bowles had devoted years to promoting British culinary heritage without public scandal. She insisted that her son was simply trying to build a legitimate commercial business using his own professional experience as an author. She urged the king to view the incident as an ambitious proposal that had simply lacked proper administrative sign-off. William looked at the table and opened the Navy folder to page 6. He read aloud from a drafted investment contract that guaranteed private investors exclusive access to private estate grounds in Cornwall and Norfolk. He pointed to a clause that promised private dining experiences hosted inside estate homes for corporate clients paying annual membership fees. William asked Camilla directly who had authorized those promises to be put in writing to foreign investors. The room remained completely quiet for several seconds, broken only by the ticking of the long case clock near the door. Camilla responded that preliminary conversations with commercial advisors were common practice across the publishing industry. She stated that no binding contracts had actually been signed or executed. William turned the page to display the handwritten notes found on the cream stationery. He showed the king the direct correlation between the leaked internal ledgers and the financial guarantees offered in Tokyo. He stated that physical security passes for Highgrove House had been issued under a false corporate profile to bypass central registry systems. King Charles took the folder from his son and spent several minutes examining the signatures and dates. The evidence demonstrated that internal estate documents had been systematically extracted over 6 months, starting in early 2026. The king laid the papers back on the table and looked at Camilla, acknowledging that the paper trail was clear and indisputable. William then presented his final demand to his father. He required the immediate cancellation of all access passes for extended family members across every royal residence. He insisted that the media consulting firm on Regent Street be blacklisted from doing any future business with royal charities or estate management teams. Camilla argued that such drastic measures would be seen by the public as an admission of severe internal corruption. She suggested a quiet settlement, where the commercial project was quietly shelved without public declarations or revoked privileges. She argued that a harsh response would create a permanent public rift during an already difficult political year. William refused to compromise on institutional governance. He stated that the new sovereign estate governance framework would be published and enforced regardless of personal relationships. He made it clear that if the royal household did not enforce strict compliance now, external government regulators would step in and launch a parliamentary inquiry. The king stood up from his chair and walked toward the window, looking out at the castle gates. He confirmed that he supported William's position on institutional transparency and security. He stated that protection protocols must apply equally to everyone, without exception for non-working family members. As the meeting concluded, William gathered the evidence files back into his Navy folder. The immediate crisis inside the room was settled, but a new question was already emerging. Investigators had just flagged a series of large, unexplained wire transfers sent to a private bank account in Zurich. The mystery of who funded the initial setup of the Regent Street firm remained completely unresolved. The public statement that rewrote palace rules At 6 o'clock on Friday evening, Kensington Palace released an official press statement across all primary media channels. Attached to the release was a 4-page administrative document titled The Sovereign Governance and Estate Access Framework, 2026. The timing was carefully calculated by communications teams to align directly with the opening of the national evening news cycle across the United Kingdom. The statement contained no dramatic emotional language, no personal accusations, and no direct mention of Tom Parker Bowles. Instead, paragraph 3 stated that all security clearance passes issued to non-working family members were formally revoked with immediate effect. Paragraph 7 declared that any commercial licensing or trademark agreement involving royal estate assets would now require explicit written approval from the Prince of Wales. Every royal correspondent in London recognized the true impact behind the neutral legal phrasing. Prince William had effectively closed the door on private commercial ventures operating within the shadow of the monarchy. The announcement sent an undeniable message to outside investment funds that access to estate assets could no longer be secured through personal family connections. By 8 o'clock, the complex financial trail behind the media consulting firm on Regent Street was finally laid bare by forensic accountants. The mystery of the heavy wire transfers sent to Zurich was resolved when banking logs revealed the identity of the primary financial backer. An offshore investment fund had provided £2 million in seed capital to finance the venture, expecting exclusive commercial rights to royal estate branding in return. With the public release of the new governance framework, that offshore investment strategy completely collapsed overnight. The private firms involved were forced to abandon their pending trademark applications in Tokyo and Singapore. Furthermore, the Metropolitan Police officially concluded their perimeter security inquiry after securing all physical documents and confirming the permanent cancellation of every compromised contractor pass. Over at Clarence House, the public fallout produced an immediate change in daily operations. Official diaries were updated to ensure that external family members were no longer listed on internal movement logs for working estates. Staff members across all departments were issued updated compliance handbooks detailing strict penalties for sharing internal administrative documents with outside entities. Public reaction to the statement was swift and largely supportive of the structural changes. Media commentators highlighted William's direct and methodical handling of the security breach as proof of his readiness to enforce institutional discipline. The decisive response established a firm legal precedent, proving that governance and transparency would take precedence over personal family considerations going forward. However, as the immediate crisis settled over Windsor Castle, a new development quietly emerged behind the scenes. Late on Friday night, a senior legal team acting for Queen Camilla filed new private foundation paperwork in Edinburgh. The official documents outlined a separate, independent commercial structure designed to operate strictly under Scottish trust laws. The unexpected legal filing proved that while William had secured absolute control over the duchy and English estate operations, the broader strategic tension was far from over. The public had witnessed William's decisive exercise of authority, but the quiet legal maneuvering behind palace doors was simply shifting into a brand new arena. This swift crackdown by Prince William marks a decisive shift in how royal power is protected in modern Britain. By locking down estate assets and redrawing security boundaries, he has made it clear that institutional rules will always come before private interest. But with new legal filings already quietly underway in Scotland, the long-term struggle over royal branding is far from over. What do you think about William's firm response to the scandal? Was he right to enforce such a strict lockdown on extended family members?